Hi, friends and family, and loved ones and fools. How y'all doing today? Yeah, this is just like so cool. Like everything that's happening and moving forward and moving right now. It's moving. It's all moving. It's all being moved through. We're moving through. Like this old to push through and be born, reborn through the new. And so there in this process, wow, this process just been like leaps and bounds lately, like where it seemed to be going like a trickle or like really slow moving, but now it's like holy crap, hyperdrive. We've been put into hyperdrive now, so let's get straight to it. I've been sharing like videos every 2 or 3 days because I've had so much come in and come through for me, and I've been asking for help, for more clarity and understanding, and just a willingness to like be here, to be right here, to be as I am right here, and just work with it and dissolve the fears and let go and surrender and know like that all is well and all is held as dear. Like we're all so dear. We're all loved and so supported and held and being cheered on right now. Yeah, there's a cheerleader. That archetype keeps coming up, the cheerleader, rah rah rah. That's like another kind of a synchronicity, or it goes along with all the raw stuff that's coming up. Yeah, so it's kind of fun. Yeah, so go team, go. Yes, love, team love, let's go. So there's a few things like that came in like the last 2 days, and as I've been working, playing, and creating with all of this like fertilization and potential, and like all this like opportunity to like know and love and become like who we are and integrate like all that we've learned, and initiate new changes to create or contribute to positive changes. So it's all about changes and relationships. The relationship that we have with ourself, our whole self, capital S self. Yes, ourself. And so with my process of forgiveness, it really was like so packed full of so much goodness. And I just had a little bit of resistance to like going more into it. Just a little ego trick, little ego trickery. To keep me from returning home to me. So it's just kind of funny, like all those things, and just how it's us sometimes fighting against ourselves, and we just don't even realize that. We think it's us versus them, but it's really, you versus you, or there's really more of us. Yeah. This is kind of funny. Like, I want to say there's really more of us than there is of them. It's more about us than it is about them. So it's kind of silly that way. But there's a couple things I wanted to share. I had a dream this morning, and I had been like working through some things and navigating certain streams and asking for more clarity. And I received that today, and that was so awesome and so cool in so many ways, and still in the middle of processing. And so I just want to review like this thing, because I just flipped open my page, so like the middle of my journal, which I'm at the end at now, like, and is just like, oh, this is just this is great. This is continuity and flow with like what I've been choosing for me, the love I've been choosing for me. So forgiveness and receptivity. So be full and free. Choose to be free. Fully let it be. I claim my power and my integrity, my undivided wholeness and my unity. I forgive myself for giving my power away, for not trusting myself and my responsibilities, my innocence and my inner knowing. I forgive myself and others for expectations, resentments, projections, stories, myths, lies, and illusions. confusion. I forgive myself for not knowing. I forgive myself for the harm I may have done while under the spell of amnesia, ignorance, or programming, false light programming. I forgive myself for making mistakes. I forgive my imperfections and my perceived weaknesses. I forgive myself my limitations. I forgive myself my past betrayals. I forgive myself for abandonment and the push and pull dynamics. I forgive myself for the experience of rejection, avoidance, and playing small. I forgive all for everything. So let it be revealed and healed. Yes. And so, yes, where we left off the other day on moving forward, charging ahead, charging forth. So it was just like thinking about actions. What actions can we take now? Because it is like time to take action, to care, to express that care. And yeah, so doing those actions in my own ways, in my own small and large ways, to care for myself and all that I love and all that matters to me. And like focusing on that value and that worth and that appreciation and that prosperity. And so, yeah, going into, oh yeah, just talking with people on Friday night. It was so awesome because like I was like taking my own little actions to inspire or activate or spark new changes that contribute like to positive changes, positive, solutions and directions of where I want to go, what I want to see, like be the change, see the change, and allow the changes, to take place. So I was so proud of some of friends and family that I'd been talking with and talking to or sharing with, and seeing the positive changes that they're taking in their own ways, like small and large, that all like add up to transformation. That all contribute to that, to those changes. So I'm proud of awesome, courageous, inspired lights, awakened hearts and souls, taking new actions to initiate positive change in service to the whole, for the good of the whole, for the good of all, for one through all. I am enough, we are enough, love is enough, there is enough. I am enough, we are enough, we are loved, supported, we are all good enough. We are worthy, we are loved, and always so enough. We are worthy, we are love, we are enough, worthy of all love, love always through love. And yeah, that's just my new story, my new tune that I'm singing. And choosing to project and choosing to reflect, choosing to connect, reconnection, the unconventional. I thought about that, like breaking out of that, the old constructs and the old conventions of doing things, the old ways of doing things, and remembering that there's so many ways to do things, experience things, learn things, and to be. So unconventional but rooted in our true diverse traditions, the divine wisdom of the sacred feminine, the sun, the seed, the egg, the stars, and the moon. Badger medicine, help me find my ways to exact a cure, to contribute to our collective healing and revealing in service to the whole. Remembering who we are, who I am willing to awaken, serve, and receive. I am. So I was thinking about the outsider looking in from without and the insider looking out from within, opening, softening, yielding to be one with all I am. Asking for love, clarity, and assistance, help from Archangel Michael and all my divine friends, guides, teachers, helpers, companions, allies, soul family support systems. New and renewed agreements and codes, get clear, envision, match, call in, and bless, praise, celebrate, imagine, dream, receive, respond, action, project a new reality through true vision, senses, inner knowing, and feeling. The 4 agreements: be impeccable with your word. Don't take things personally. Don't make assumptions. Always do your best. I am willing to play, embody, appreciate, cultivate, learn, move forward, and play, practice, appreciate. Yeah. Value, like, yeah, the gifts that I've been given. And I've seen and I acknowledge, like, how far I have come and what I've been able to be with, work with, play through, navigate through, and integrate. And just over this last year, since April 22nd, when I started on a new moon, like, initiated these new things. Now it's been like almost a year that I've been showing up and speaking here, and it has gotten easier. It's easier, yeah, to be here, to be right here, and not so much like in my head or managing, ego managing, like perceptions or like what other people are going to think, or being worried so much about, oh, how do I say this, or yeah, how do I express this, or how do I present this, or how do I act this out, this play or this role that I'm playing in or playing at. So, but it's just funny, like, show up and be yourself. So however I am, just as I am, right as I am, right here I am. So it is easier to be here and to be me. So it's easier to show up. And I really appreciate and value how I've been able to show up and participate in and through my own ways, and what I've been able to work through, learn through, show up for every day. My willingness to share my experience, my process, and my authenticity, my voice, my truth, and my love for all of me and we. And yeah, just appreciating, like, all the things around me and within me and available and accessible to me and we, and all the possibilities, all the love there is for all of we. And so just like getting some things, yeah, flowers, blossoms, and fruit. Blessed be the fruit of thy womb. Snake, I saw 2 snakes yesterday, and they went under my front porch, and one after the other. So that was kind of fun. Like, oh, I hadn't ever seen like little snakes out there before. A neighbor had mentioned like seeing them and getting like freaked out just because it's like that reaction, that entrained reaction to fear it. But I just like glanced, like I saw some movement out of the corner of my eye and saw it, and I was just like, ooh, like, yeah, and watching it just slither along, and just so cool. But anyways, yeah, it just made me think of like 2 snakes and the Kundalini, Ida, and Pingala, and yeah, just some other things that came up, correspondences and synchronicities, the roots, the fruit, the seed, the egg, and the crown. Shamans, wizards, witches, muggles, amnesiacs, sleeping, awakening angels. Sekhmet, Lakshmi, Parvati, Sarasvati, Kali, Durga, Isis, Mat, Hathor, Aurora, Ra, Osiris, Horus, Rama, and Maha. Divine union, superconsciousness. Iris the messenger, Sophia wisdom, Athena the warrior, Magdalene, Magdalena, healers, warriors, awakened angels in human form, awakened beings, way showers, lovers of the light, unite through the darkest, longest night. Sunshine rays, Rama, Star of David, bathe in the light and come into balance once more through the days of this great remembering, becoming all we are, a new dawning of the golden age. Knowing my own value and owning my own worth, dancing in the flames, shamanic death, rebirth. Cleansing lenses, purifying aspects, becoming whole, penetrating illusions, illuminating wounds, and clearing the distortions of the inverted heart womb. The usurped tomb, the great cosmic rune. Returned, renewed. Reconnection, renewable, reaccessible, divine reunion, legions of light. Seeing I am enough, we are enough, love is enough, and so it is. Love never loses its value. It only appreciates what it is to increase its own value. It only lives to give what it is to all it is. Regeneration, relax into love, fires of purification, radiance, and remembrance. Healing, becoming whole, becoming all I am. Inspiration, action, care, always do my best. Don't take anything personally. Open my heart and trust the rest. Focus, root, and anchor the I am presence. I love, therefore I am. The chakra system, recalibration, rewiring, unscrambling, deciphering, rewriting, remembering, rewiring, white, black, pink, red, blue, purple, indigo, gold, and green, yellow. Feet, head, heart, voice, crown, solar plexus, root, sacral, pineal gland. 369 123 327 118 973 6s 4s 5 8s 210. Interesting. Speaking, singing, chanting, moving, stretching, rebuilding, restructuring, rearranging, regenerating. Plants, attention, care, healing, receptivity, appreciation and curiosity, generosity, correct actions. I am willing to show up as I am and care for this love right here. Personal goals, desires, dreams, pursuits, intentions, seeds, great harvest and celebration. Time to plant, nurture, rest, and enjoy. Pink quartz crystal, turquoise, obsidian, shungite, organite, amethyst, the magician, high priestess, and the butterfly. Psyche and Eros together again. Is that my mythology? Really? Separate from my or her beloved? Misplaced trust, betrayal, and broken trust. Broken bonds, labors of love, willingness, beauty and courage, faith and trust. Divine grace and intervention. Wandering, weeping, struggling, but persevering and enduring. Jealousy, envy, suspicion, greed, pride, and vanity, the dark side, our Aphrodite shadow. And impossible tasks and feats, heroic deeds. Yeah, and the wounded feminine. Her sisters planted a dark seed, inception, doubt, the power of suggestion, that her holy husband was a grotesque and evil dark monster, even though he showered her with affection and showed her nothing but love, care, gentleness, and kindness. But she could not look upon him without being overwhelmed by his radiance, his countenance, his light body, his embodiment. So she must now learn to know, love, trust, and believe in herself, to reconcile and make amends through this penance or presence or transcendence with the help and assistance of divine friends, helpers, and companions. And a willingness, a hope, a desire, a renewed desire to love again, to live again, begin again, a longing, a yearning to be together or come together as one again. We all have our weaknesses, strengths, potential, and limitations, gifts, innate intelligence, and inner knowing, and abilities, skills, contributions, worth, and value. Can we remember that? Can we all remember that? And hold space for that during this transition into higher states of being, operating, and knowing through the higher states of awareness, through our common senses, letting go of, the lower ego, of the judgments and what I believe we should not or cannot be. The truth is simple. I love simplicity, the true understanding of everything. Priorities, multitasking, fast-moving opportunities. It's time to initiate and rev into hyperdrive. Know the universe and life is on your side. Yeah, know yourself. Know the universe and life is on your side. Crystalline vision, getting clear, allowing, releasing, dissolving the fears and distortions through being love here, through being right here, through living right here, through receiving love here. Emotional mastery and self-mastery, self-contained, owning myself, governing myself, loving myself, becoming myself, being myself, and knowing myself. The spiral, Ankh, lotus, mud, waters, fire, Star of David, below and above. The power of thoughts, the power of the word, the power of emotion, the power of belief, the power of suggestion, projection, inception, intention, attention, reception, direction, connection, reflection, memory, thought, and repetition. Patterns, energetic, mental, magnetic, electric, active, receptive, repellent, attractive, responsive, reactive, expansive, contractive, proactive, retractive, transcended. Dog medicine, loyalty, innocence, friendship, trust, cooperation, guardianship, leadership, wolf, teacher, teamwork, community, pack, and individual leaders. Sovereignty, service, camaraderie, the trinity and the interchangeability of the 1, 2, and 3. The power of the heart and our fertility, the power of our imagination and wonderful creativity. the power of our love and the freedom to be, the power of the word, the power of integrity, the power of suggestion, the power of belief, the power of the soul, this power alive through being. Yeah, the power of alive in me and we, the power of trust and integrity, the power of one, the power of the sun, the power of the light to shine, share, and radiate, penetrate, illuminate, and transform everything, driving the darkness away. Yeah, and that was what I wrote the last day or two. And then this morning, yeah, this is what I wrote this morning because I woke up from a dream, and I've been having like somewhat of a challenging time, like being consistent with recalling or doing that first thing in the morning. And so I've been like willing, like I'm not going to beat myself up about it, and I'll just say, okay, like, because the other day I had a dream and then it was like, oh, it was gone before I was able to sit down and go into it. But I was just like, okay, easy come, easy go. We'll see if it comes back in. But if not, like, I'm willing to, like, yeah, choose, yeah, to receive the messages that are available. And so it was an interesting dream, even though I didn't think much of it when I woke up. I was just like, okay, we'll just see what this has for me. Because sometimes I know, like, I just know when there's like some potent like message in there for me where it's like, holy crap, like I can tell right on about the surface, from the surface of things. But sometimes it's not as apparent. Yeah. And you got to dig a little deeper, or just like show up for it, or allow it to speak. Yeah. And so even though I didn't think it was like anything like freaking ginormous or gigantic or new or anything, I just thought, okay, I'll play around with these themes and write down what I can recall about it and go from there, and just be willing to receive like what, yeah, this has for me, the gift that it, has been given, and the gift that I'm open to receive. And so, yeah, it does relate to some other things that I realized, some breakthroughs that came through as I was following through with this little dream. So I'll just share a little bit with you and then where it led. And it was freaking amazing. I didn't expect it either. It was just like came out of nowhere. So it was a caregiving dream, and I have a lot of those because I've been such a caregiver, and I had worked so long at being a caregiver, and I played that role all of my life pretty much. So it's not unusual that, yeah, I keep going back there to the past, to parts of my past where like that's the role I'm playing, So yeah, it's interesting. So a caregiving dream, and it seems to be a little bit messy indeed. All sorts of shenanigans and gatherings, dynamics of subgroupings playing out in little or smaller dynamics and relationships, like the micro and macro scales. Yeah. So I'm taking care of my beautiful friend in my dream, and she comes up and asks me to help change her and get her cleaned up into the toilet. So yeah, to eliminate. So it seems like there's a little bit of a miss. Oops. That's like a Freudian slip. So something that I missed. That's funny. A little mess of loose and stringy poo. So on the wall or the surface of some kind. But I start to assist her, and I get ready to do some laundry. Like, I'm always doing laundry. I'm always sorting through laundry too, like in these dreams. Like never ending laundry. Funny. So airing out the laundry. So there's a little bit of a mess, but I start to assist her and get ready to do some laundry and attend to a few chores and tasks around the house. I don't really recognize this house. It seems to be somewhat of a communal, or even extended to include seen and unseen relations, familiars, and family. There is a dog kennel for dogs and animals, a big St. Bernard in one cage. He reminds me of my St. Bernard, yeah, that I loved, but he's slightly different, yeah, so a St. Bernard in one cage. My cousin, which, like, this isn't even a cousin in real life, it was a cousin in the dream, though. So I put cousin. My cousin is taking care of this dog. It's a male, but I know the dog. Like, His family is away and he has a little bit of separation anxiety. A mess was made, but it's all been cleared and cleaned up. They actually need to give the dog a haircut on his forehead and face to remove the stickiness, like the mess that was made. And now he's more at ease, and I pat him on his forehead through the chain link enclosure. And we recognize and trust each other. Now my cousin is spending time with the kids, which, yeah, the kids in the dream aren't really my stepkids, but I think there might be symbolic of stepkids or something. Yeah, aspects of my own self. So, of the dual nature, because it's a boy and a girl. And so now my cousin is their uncle. So they're spending quality time together. So that's interesting. It's like interchangeable brother, cousin, uncle, male energy. So I was just like, oh, that's interesting, like what it's showing me about that. There's a stage, like there's another sequence of this dream, another scene. There's a stage or a little Mormon church gym type of a stage setting, and it seems like a small group of people are on stage, either putting on a play, a show, or a serious discussion panel, playing important community roles. There's a girl that I don't care for, or I have some kind of grievance with, or a disagreement with, and she's up on the stage, and I'm silently communicating to her that I'd like to smack her face, or smack the goofy smile right off of her face. LOL, I kinda gesturing to her in a silent language that I see through her and I know what she's up to and I don't approve or like her. It is like a need, an ego need to drive her away into exile or remove her from this or our community shared space. There's some kind of competition, comparison, wounded role of the feminine, old hurts, betrayal, unresolved trauma, and then she turns into an ex-girlfriend. But she's much younger than when I knew her. It's kind of funny. But she's not totally herself, maybe a combination of two different personalities, one aware and one asleep to choices, actions, and responsibilities. A combination of like two people, but more like an addict that is unconscious and acting, playing a role that's been handed down, inherited. So autopilot scripts playing out. The comfort zone, we know, the familiar, safe zone. The misery we know, the monster that we think we can conform or control. She goes to leave the room or the home. Her eyes look clear, but is anybody really home? She seems to be innocent and unaware. I go to leave and I'm going out the front door, and there is a huge basin or this huge like tub, wooden basket type of a barrel that has like all the communal dirty laundry in it. And in order to navigate out of this house, out of the doorway, I've got to go into the barrel, in it to get out and through the doorway. It's no big deal really, just a little bit of sidestepping and maneuvering to step in and then hop right out again to the other side. There's just one more thing to confront and let go of, one more choice or encounter to address, allow, open to, and close. Yeah, to close this chapter, to move forward and on to the new. So interesting, because yesterday I was getting the message that the only way out is through, and maybe just detoxing and removing an old program or letting it fall away, making a choice and choosing to care, taking actions and responsibility for myself and what matters and belongs to me, letting go of the past and all the past perceived mistakes, hurts, and instinct injury, psychic injuries, old relationships, roles, and dynamics where I gave my power away and got sucked into others' pain, agendas, and sob stories and hoard myself away. But I also had my own agendas in which I got carried away and then blamed them without taking my own responsibility to play. Yeah, and choosing to be accountable for me and my energy. So this younger girlfriend seemed to be on seemed to be an innocent and maybe just a little bit naive, gullible, and ignorant to the ways of the world. I seem to be making threats or playing into some form of intimidation. So where do I feel the most threatened or intimidated or vulnerable or defensive? Where am I still at war or fighting against myself or my own ego? Leaking energy or misdirecting, to this false image or old role. Old story, old wound, just let go and go through to move forward into now. Let the family group sort through their own dirty laundry. Let them go for now. Farewell and be well. And then I wrote down like a little bit more about this because there's like more that came in. And after I'd written 2 more pages about taking new actions and choosing and making decisions and following through and showing up and being willing to move forward and initiating new actions to spark these positive changes. Yeah. In service to the whole, in service to all oneself. Yeah. Divine intervention and grace. And so my true authentic soul is being expressed and becoming, unfolding, unfurling. And I'm becoming all I am, emerging and unfolding. It's easier to show up and speak and share what I'm feeling. It's easier to be who I am more authentically. It's easier to be in the moment. It's easier to let go. It's easier to trust and surrender. It's easier to be in the flow. It's easier to trust and let go. It's easier to embrace the unknown. It's easier to allow and let go. New ideas and inspiration for new projects and creation. So I have some fun things, in store, and some new dreams. So yes, for gratitude for all I have been able to experience, give, receive, share, learn, and integrate, to give back, transmute, and dissolve, redirect, and regenerate. Thinking about resentments, expectations, disappointments, and attachments, and saying thank you for the experience and the gifts we've been able to share. Now I am fully honoring the whole damn experience. Say yes, I appreciate, bless, thank, and give it back to free me and we, and honor the gifts that were and have been given and received. So especially I'm willing to let go of the false self, the ego attachments and idealistic expectations and desires around certain teaching dynamics, relationships, and religious or spiritual preferences, assumptions, and taking things personally, reactive fixed opinions or beliefs, distorted perceptions, false pedestal images, like medicine bonds and saviors, leaders, elders, mentors, practitioners, healers, etc., and how they choose to see me and we. Like letting go of that need to please or that need to manage how they perceive or what they receive or what they believe. It's not my business. It's not for me. To decide for them or to save anyone but me. So there it is. So my dream this morning seems to say or be showing me something about my dual nature or our dual nature. The boy and the girl and the roles that we play, the relationships and that interchangeability. The one awake or aware and one asleep or operating unconsciously or not fully aware of oneself. Innocent but somewhat checked out. Can I really blame them for choosing to remain asleep? Maybe the awakening is painful, uncomfortable, disorienting, and feels terrifyingly unstable. So I can have or choose compassion instead of fighting their unconscious choices, their consensus reality, or their defensiveness to protect, ego protection, themselves from threatening change. And the death, like their resistance to the death of the ego. Clinging to old fixed roles, identities, patterns, strategies of the false self, an undeveloped ego. False images, beliefs, identities, perceptions, programs, myth stories, attachments, security, and survival strategies. The hamster wheel of illusion, running through the body of pain, creating the nightmare or the messy dream, and making them believe in their own false realities of suffering, trauma, and disease. I'm willing to own my own bullshit and my power to love and be accountable to me. I allow the rest to exist and or fall away. OMG, I just realized that my beef with the stupid or with stupidity, because I was asking myself that the other day, like, what is it about the stupid, Because like in the beginning it was like, well, what is it about the bullshit that I just can't tolerate or just have such low tolerance about or for? And just like working through those things about what's mine and what's not mine. And all of that. But then like lately it's been all about like, the stupid hurts. It hurts my head. The stupid hurts my face. Yeah. Mm. And just like how I'm perceiving it, or how it seems to be from the surface and the appearance of things. And so I just realized that it's related to my fear of being wrong or being seen as wrong. Yeah. Or my dislike of being seen as wrong, my dislike of being wronged, my dislike of feeling that feeling of wrongness and being manipulated. Yeah. And pressured. Yeah. And then choosing to hide myself and pretend that I'm all right, so I can be seen as right and not wrong. Alrighty then, LOL, that's the comfort zone, like the safety zone. Like to try to use that false control. Yeah. And so mad at them, or mad at myself for not knowing. So it's not really about like anyone being stupid or playing at being stupid. It's just the ignorance that causes this suffering, or the perpetual recycling of so much unnecessary pain, reinforcing the wounds of separation and the victim blame shame game. So yeah, and there's like really small. I like went back and was like, oh, it's this. Okay, here it is. So it was immature personality games, the undeveloped ego, the will of samsara, mental and emotional slavery. So fighting about what I'm not, like through these internal and or external dynamics, and that obsessive compulsion or ego strategy about what I need to prove. That what I'm really about, and need to prove that I am not. So there's this need to prove that I'm worthy and to prove that I belong. And this like obsessive compulsive story to argue with what I am not, or to be against what I believe I am not. Yeah, and it was like, oh my God, I'm worthy. So I need to prove that I'm worthy by proving what I'm not, to prove that I belong. So that's interesting and pretty stupid, ha ha ha. An implanted story loop to keep me chasing my own tales of exile and reinforce the pain of separation. Silly egos, tricks are for kids. Silly dear. Now let's go and move along. There's room for you here, dear ego. Thanks for helping me get along and move on from right here. So that's kind of funny because the Ouroboros keeps coming up too, and I can't remember if it was a video or where I got this from, but it was like something that I heard, I think yesterday, about the Ouroboros chasing its own light, or consciousness chasing its own light, or consciousness chasing its own thoughts, like that creates like form or reality. But I'll have to like ask to see more into that. But it's just like what it reminded me of, the story loop that keeps chasing my own tail. Yeah, like the Ouroboros is eating itself, like the eater while being eaten. No, the eater is being eaten while eating, or the eater while eating is being eaten. Yeah. Okay, so move on from here. Yeah, total immersion. Love is who we are. Love it, live it. Love is who you are. There are so many ways of doing, learning, experiencing everything. I do love the simplicity of being as we are, simplicity of knowing who we are, true understanding, simple truth, basic truths. We just inherently know, like, as we are. Like, we inherently know, like, certain basic truths to be true. Yeah, how simple. Emotional fatigue, that we've been feeling. I feel like, I feel like we've felt it in and through our own ways. Yeah, every one of us. But kind of like can feel into that, like by feeling into me. Yeah, and just kind of getting those things. But to endure emotional fatigue and endurance. We've got this. This is the last leg of the marathon, and we move on to a new chapter, a new way of life, a new beginning of becoming all we are. One last hurdle and one more trip through the maze, one last thing to tie up, one last thing to receive and transform, one last time to break open and free through the other side, through the door. One last pop quiz, one more opportunity to bring it in, bring it through, and as one, move on to. We're so close now. Open, surrender, trust, turn on, shine on, all you crazy diamonds. Thank you. I trust and let go. I am willing. Thank you, love, for in and through. All one love, remembering all we are and all we have come through. And then I realized too, like, what is it about the one way and the one-way street and the tyrannical overreach of this is for your own good and we know it's best for you, and why can't you see that we just want to take care of you, and why can't you see how selfish you are, and that you've got to go our way, you know, like go along to get along, and yeah, all that silly song. And then I was like, oh wow, so like that is the ego, like the false control, but it really is like creating something that's more brutal, like this tyrant, this inner tyrant, and this inner tyrant that we get to acknowledge and see through. Yeah. So it seems to actually come back around to the motherfucking tyrant, the tyrant, the ego's guard, LOL, of what I'm not allowed to be. Yeah, me fighting against me, denying my dual nature and rejecting what I believe I am not supposed to be. Yeah, fighting against or rejecting what I believe I am not, or I am not supposed to be, or allowed to be. To be worthy, to be enough, to be good, to be accepted, to be included, to belong, to be loved. Fighting or denying, defending, rejecting this tyrant distortion and overcorrection of the victim judge, lower consciousness, the misdirected force. False perception of control, that there is only one right way to be, to see, to experience, to learn, to grow, to become all things. Pretty hilarious indeed, silly beings being so silly. So believing there's only one way, LOL, when love is all ways. Return to rightful owner, return to original sender, return home, return to myself. The bargain without knowing and dismemberment. And so that was like what I wrote down, and then I was going to go into my book. It's been calling to me, Women Who Run with the Wolves, and continue with the stages of the 7 stages of transformation, which I went over. The first stage was the bargain without knowing, and the second stage is dismemberment. So I was going to look at the second stage today, but I actually ended up going to another page, and that was exactly freaking aligned with what I needed and what I asked for. And it was so cool because I want to share that with you. And then something else that came through. So the first stage is the bargain without knowing. The second stage is the dismemberment. The third stage is the wandering. The fourth stage, finding love in the underworld. The fifth stage, the harrowing of the soul. The sixth stage, the realm of the wild woman. And the seventh stage, the wild bride and bridegroom. And that's from the Handless Maiden. So I'll share this dismemberment in the next video. But for now, this is what I was able to receive, and I'm grateful and still in process now. So when Women Who Run with the Wolves, I flipped open to this page, 291, The Lonely Man. In a story similar to the core of this one, it is actually a human woman who lures a whale man to copulate with her by stealing his fin. In other stories, the offspring is sometimes a girl, sometimes a fish boy. Sometimes the old one out in the sea is a venerable old female. Because there is so much gender exchange in stories, the maleness and femaleness of the characters in the story are far less important than the proscribed process. In this spirit, let us consider that the lonely man who steals the sealskin represents the ego of a woman's psyche. The health of the ego is often determined by how well one measures boundaries in the outer world, how strongly one's identity is formed, how well one differentiates past, present, and future, and how closely one's perceptions coincide with consensual reality. It is a timeless motif in human psyche that the ego and the soul vie to control the life force. In early life, the ego, with its appetites, often leads. It is always cooking something up that smells really good. So the ego is very muscular during this time. Let's see. Okay, so the ego, with its appetites, often leads. It is always cooking up something that smells really good. The ego is very muscular during this time. It relegates the soul to back porch kitchen duty. But at some point, sometimes in our 20s, sometimes our 30s, most often the 40s, although some women aren't really ready until they're 50 or 60 or even in their 70s or 80s, we begin at last to let the soul lead. The power shifts away from the bric-a-brac and frick-frack to soulfulness. And though the soul does not assume the lead by killing off the ego is demoted, one might say, and given a different assignment in the psyche, which is essentially to submit to the concerns of the soul. From the time we are born, there is a wildish urge within us that desires our souls lead our lives, for the ego can only understand just so much. Imagine the ego on a permanent and relatively short leash. It can only go so far into the mysteries of life and spirit. Usually it becomes frightened. It has a bad habit of reducing all numinosity to a nothing but. It demands facts that are observable. Proofs that are of a feeling or a mystical nature do not very often sit well with the ego. That is why the ego is lonely. It is very limited in its constructs in this way. It cannot fully participate in the more mysterious processes of soul and psyche. Yet the lonely man yearns for soul, dimly recognizes soulful and wildish things when they are near. Some people use the words soul and spirit interchangeably. But in fairy tales, the soul is always the progenitor, or the progenitor of spirit. The progenitor and the progenitor of spirit. In arcane hermeneutics, the spirit is a being born of the soul. The spirit inherits or incarnates into matter in order to gather news of the ways of the world and carries these back to the soul. So that is interesting. That it relates to my dream. Yeah. The spirit inherits or incarnates into matter in order to gather news of the ways of the world and carries these back to the soul. When not interfered with, the relationship between soul and spirit is one of perfect symmetry. Each enriches the other in turn. Together, the soul and spirit form an ecology, as in a pond where the creatures at the bottom nourish those at the top, and those at the top nourish those at the bottom. In Jungian psychology, the ego is often described as a small island of consciousness that floats in a sea of unconsciousness. So the ego is often described as a small island of consciousness that floats in a sea of unconsciousness. However, in folklore, the ego is portrayed as a creature of appetite, often symbolized by a not very bright animal or animals, a not very bright human, or animal surrounded by forces very mystifying to it, and over which it attempts to gain control. Sometimes the ego is able to gain control in a most brutish and destructive manner, but in the end, through the heroine's or hero's progress, it most often loses its bid to reign. In the beginning of one's life, the ego is curious about the soul world, but more often is concerned with fulfilling its own hungers. The ego is initially born into us as potential and is shaped, developed, and filled up with ideas, values, and duties by the world around us. Our parents, our teachers, our culture. And this is as it should be, for it becomes our escort, our armor, and our scout in the outer world. However, if the wildish nature is not allowed to emanate upward through the ego, giving it color, juice, and instinctive responsiveness, then, although the culture may approve of what has been fashioned in this ego, the soul does not, cannot, will not approve such incompleteness of its work. The lonely man in the tale is attempting to participate in the life of the soul, but like the ego, he is not particularly built for it and tries to grab at the soul rather than develop a relationship with it. Why does the ego steal the sealskin? Like all other lonely or hungry things, it loves the light. It sees light and the possibility of being close to the soul, and it creeps up to it, and it stills one of its essential camouflages. Ego cannot help itself. It is what it is, attracted to the light. Even though it cannot live under the water, it has its own yearning for relationship with the soul. The ego is crude in comparison to the soul. Its way of doing things is usually not evocative or sensitive, but it has a tiny and dimly understood longing for the beautiful light, and this, in some way and for some time, calms the ego. So, in a hunger for soul, our own ego self steals the pelt. Stay with me, whispers the ego. I will make you happy by isolating you from your soul self and your cycles of returning to your soul home. I will make you very, very happy. Please, please stay. And so, as is right in the beginning of feminine individuation, the soul is pressured into relationship with the ego. The mundane function of the soul's subservience to the ego occurs in order for us to learn the world, the way to gain things, how to work, how to differentiate good from not so good, when to move, when to stay put, how to live with other people, learning the mechanics and the machinations of culture, holding a job, holding a baby, taking care of the body, taking care of business, all the things of the outer life. The initial purpose of developing such an important construct within a woman's psyche, the marriage of the seal woman and the lonely man, a marriage in which she is definitely subservient, is to create a temporary arrangement that will ultimately produce a spirit child who can cohabit and translate in and between both mundane and wildish worlds. So, the spirit child, will ultimately, so this temporary arrangement will produce a spirit child who can cohabit and translate in and between both the mundane and the wildish worlds. Once this symbolic child is born, developed, initiated, it resurfaces into the outer world and the relationship with the soul is healed. Even though the lonely man, the ego, cannot dominate forever, for someday it must submit to the demands of soul for the rest of a woman's life. By living with the seal woman, soul woman, it has been touched by greatness and is therefore gratified, enriched, and humbled all at the same time. Just wow. And then here's the spirit child. So we see that the union of the opposites between ego and soul produces something of infinite value, the spirit child. And it is true that even when the ego roughly intrudes upon the more subtle aspects of psyche and soul, a cross-fertilization is taking place. Paradoxically, by stilling the soul's protection and its ability to vanish into the water at will, the ego participates in making a child who will claim dual heritage, world and soul, one who will be able to carry messages and gifts back and forth between the two. In some of the greatest tales, such as the Gaelic Beauty and the Beast and the Mexican Bruja Milagra, and the Japanese Tsukino Waguma, the bear, finding the way back to one's rightful psychic order, begins with the feeding of or the caring for a lonely and or injured woman, man, or beast. That such a child who will have the ability to traverse two very different worlds can come from a woman who is in such a skinless state and married to something in herself or in the outer world that is so lonely and undeveloped is one of the constant miracles of the psyche. So let's read that again. That such a child who will have the ability to traverse two very different worlds can come from a woman who is in such a skinless state and married to something in herself or in the outer world that is so lonely and undeveloped is one of the constant miracles of the psyche. Something occurs within us when we are in such a state, something that produces a feeling state, a tiny new life, a small flame that thrives under imperfect, arduous, or even inhumane conditions. This spirit child is La Nina Milagrosa, a miracle child who has the ability to hear the call, hear the far-off voice that says it is time to come back to oneself. The child is a part of our medial nature that compels us, for it can hear the call when it comes. It is the child rising out of sleep, out of bed, out of the house, and out into the wind-filled night and down to the wild sea that causes us to assert, as God is my witness, I shall proceed in this way, or I will endure, or I shall not be turned away, or I shall find a way to continue. It is the child who brings the sealskin, soulskin back to his mother. It is the child who enables her to return to her home. This child is a spiritual power that impels us to continue our important work, to push back, change our lives, better the community, join in helping to balance the world, all by returning to home. If one wants to participate in these things, the difficult marriage between soul and ego must be made, the spirit child must be brought to life. Retrieval and return are the goals of mastery. Regardless of a woman's circumstances, the spirit child, the old seal who rises up from the sea calling his daughter home, and the open sea are always near, always, even in places and at times one might least expect them to be present. Since 1971, I've taught writing as contemplative practice in prisons and penitentiaries across the nation. On a particular trip to a federal women's prison with a group of artists healers in order to do performance and teach a group of 100 women who were intensely involved in a spiritual growth program there, as usual, I saw a few hardened women. Instead, I saw dozens of women in various stages of seal womanness. Many had been figuratively but also literally captured through their intensely naive choices. Whatever their reasons for being there, in spite of the most constrained conditions, each woman in her own way was clearly in the process of creating a spirit child, carefully and painfully fashioned from her own flesh, from her own bones. Each woman was searching also for the seal skin. Each was in the process of remembering the way back to the soul home. One artist of our troupe, a young black violinist named India Cook, played for the women. We were outdoors in the open yard. It was very cold, and the wind was making an ooh sound around the backdrop on the open stage. The violinist drew her bow across the strings of her electrified violin and played sternum-piercing music in a minor key. Truly, her violin wept. A big Lakota woman pounded on my arm and hoarsely whispered, "This sound! This sound, that violin unlocks a place in me. I thought I was locked up good and tight and forever." Her broad face was both puzzled and ethereal. My heart broke on itself, but in a good way. For I saw that no matter what had happened to her, and much had happened to her, she could still hear the cry from over the sea, that call from home. In the sealskin, soulskin story, the seal maiden tells her child stories about what lives and thrives under the sea. She instructs through her stories, shaping this child who was born of her union with the ego. She is forming the child, teaching it the terrain and the ways of the other. The soul is preparing this wildest child of the psyche for something very important. Most of a woman's depressions, anews, and wandering confusions are caused by a severely restricted soul life in which innovation, impulse, and creation are restricted or forbidden. Women receive enormous impulse to act from the creative force. We cannot overlook the fact that there is still much thieving and hamstringing of women's talents through cultural restriction and punishment of her natural and wildish instincts. We can break away from this condition if there is an underground river or even a little freshet pouring from somewhere soulful into our lives. But if a woman far from home surrenders all power, she will become first a fog, then a vapor, and finally a wisp of her former wildish self. All this secreting away of a woman's natural pelt and her subsequent drying out and crippling reminds me of an old story that circulated in our family among the several old country tailors. My late Uncle Vilmos once told it to calm and teach an angry adult in our extended family, one who was being too harsh with the child. Uncle Vilmos had infinite patience and tenderness toward humans and creatures. He was a natural story, and he was skilled in applying stories as gentle medicine. And so that story is told next, and I have not read that yet. But I was just like, wow, like as soon as I flipped open to that lonely man, and then I got that beautiful, the spirit child, and I'm just blown away by like just wow, and how unexpected it was. And how it so perfectly relates so well. Yeah, love always. And to what we're breaking through and coming into. And then I picked up this book because I was looking at the elements. This is In the House of the Moon. As I was going back to certain things like from last month where I wanted to, or I'm just learning like different things. And I was just like, this is something to revisit. Here are the elements. So like the elements of water and earth and fire and air and metal, like just different traditions and stuff. And this book is a tradition, like kind of like more, it's like all traditions, but I think it's written by practitioners of traditional Chinese medicine. And so there's, yeah, a lot of awesome things in here. And so I was going to look at the element of water and fire, but what really actually came in today was earth. So like my ego is like, oh, let's like look at the water and the fire, because like that relates to like the Star of David and the feminine and the masculine. Yeah, those qualities that are, yeah, seen in those triangles, the water, the downward triangle of water, like the chalice, and then the upward triangle, upright triangle that represents the fire, or the sword, the blade, you know, the blade and the chalice and the blade. But yeah, there's the earth here that actually just, yeah, was what was meant for me to receive. And I just want to share a couple things about that. But I'm just going to pause this for just a minute and I'll be right back. Hey, we're right back. So, yeah, this is actually a soul collage card that I've had out with like 14 other cards. And that is like what I used as my bookmark just now. Like, yeah, for that. To hold my place there. And that's kind of interesting. So, Earth, the Peacemaker, from the House of the Moon, or In the House of the Moon by Jason Elias and Catherine Ketchum. So when we think of the earth, we imagine a globe or sphere, but in the ancient Chinese texts, heaven is represented by the circle while the earth is symbolized by the square. Squareness is considered a primary quality of earth in its verb form. This seems absolutely right, for to square something means to reconcile, conciliate, harmonize, adapt, and adjust. Activities and states of being that are governed by the power of earth. The symbol of heaven is the circle, and that of earth is the square. Thus, squareness is a primary quality of the earth. Nature creates all beings without erring. This is its straightness. It is calm and still. This is its foursquareness. It tolerates all creatures equally. This is its greatness. Therefore, it attains what is right for all without artifice or special intentions. Woman achieves the height of wisdom when all that she does is as self-evident as what nature does. Earth is a mother, peacemaker, and lover of harmony. Her devoted, receptive nature is the perfect complement to the creative powers of heaven. One complete revolution of the heavens makes a day. One day is followed by another, and in this cycle is created the idea of time, which is the untiring power inherent in the image of heaven. Earth does not attempt to compete with heaven's power. Her great and enduring wisdom resides in the realization that she cannot compete, but through her yielding, receptive nature, she ensures that a sense of wonder will find its way into earthly affairs. By conforming her nature to the impulses and creative potential of heaven, Earth allows herself to be guided by divine energies. Through her tangible spatial energy, Earth permits the spiritual potential of heaven to be experienced. For only through the visible earth can the invisible heaven be perceived. The wind blows over the lake and stirs the surface of the water. Thus, visible effects of the invisible manifest themselves. Humility is a central quality of earth, but not in the modern-day sense of the word, which focuses on self-abnegation and servility. To the ancients, humility connoted mildness, modesty, patience of spirit, and a willingness to remove oneself from the center of the universe. This is the nature of Earth's humility, for she has an unerring sense of her limitations, and she is keenly aware of the place where she fits and feels at home. The image of a soaring bird is offered in the I Ching to help us understand the nature of home, that place where we do not strain or stray from the way of our own nature. Just as a bird invites misfortune by attempting to transcend its limitations and fly directly into the sun, so should we follow the dictates of our own nature and keep our feet firmly grounded on earth. A bird should not try to surpass itself and fly into the sun. It should descend to the earth where its nest is. If a bird will not come to its nest but flies higher and higher, it eventually falls into the hunter's net. She who in times of extraordinary assailants of small things does not know how to call a halt, but restlessly seeks to press on and on, draws upon herself misfortune because she deviates from the order of nature. So Earth calls us back home, offering a safe haven where we can rest and refresh our spirits. Earth's power reminds us that we are just flesh and blood. Earth's power reminds us that we are just flesh and blood, but she also understands that we are sparked with spirit and yearn to fly into the heavens, hoping to penetrate the mysteries of the unknown. As we struggle with our limitations and imperfections, the power of Earth reminds us of who we are and where we belong. When a woman seeks to climb so high that she loses touch with the rest of humankind, she becomes isolated, and this necessarily leads to failure. If Earth is the primary power that molds and shapes your nature, you are naturally tolerant and forgiving. People feel safe with you, for you accept all of life in all its glorious diversity, making no attempt to discriminate, categorize, or judge others. All fit within your embrace, all belong, all are accepted, for you do not ask others to be anything but themselves. By following Earth's example, we learn how to be tolerant. Just as the earth is boundlessly wide, sustaining and caring for all creatures on it, so the sage sustains and cares for all people and excludes no part of humanity. If you are energized by the power of Earth, you are a natural mediator, for Earth types thrive on peace and harmony and are thrown off balance by discord and dissension. You dislike quarreling and you naturally avoid conflicts, not because you fear the airing of differences, but because you would rather be stripped of your possessions, including pride and the desire to have the last word, than see someone else deprived. So, that was kind of funny. This little story here where two old men had lived together a very, very long time and always treated each other with great respect. In fact, never once had they quarreled. But after a lifetime of watching other people argue and fight over their possessions, one of the old men suggested to his friend that perhaps they should learn how to quarrel, as others did. "But I don't know how to quarrel," the other replied. "And this is the way to create a quarrel," the first explained, for he had observed well. "I will put a brick in between us, and I will say, 'This is mine,' and then it is your turn to say, 'No, it is mine,' and then the quarrel will begin." So they put a brick between them, and one said, "This is mine," after which the other dutifully said, "No, it is mine." But then the first said, "Yes, of course, it is all yours. You must have it." And as soon as the quarrel had begun, it was over. So Earth helps us to find a center between opposing forces, teaching us how to resolve our differences and find sensible solutions to even the most difficult problems. Earth's wisdom is contained in a maxim from the Tao Te Ching, which advises that we just stay at the center of the circle and let all things take their course. Like the moon who turns her face to the sun and is contentedly illuminated by its powerful light-giving energy, Earth gratefully accepts divine inspiration from higher sources. Earth intuitively understands the moon's cyclic nature, for just at the moment when the moon becomes full and stands directly opposite the sun, her powers begin to wane. Following the moon's example, Earth prepares for a waning after every waxing, instinctively knowing when it is time to retreat and store up her energy in preparation for the responsibilities that await her. It is in Earth's nature to be prepared. If your Earth energies are strong and your affinities are here, you experience great joy in giving and receiving. Because you know that the most precious possessions in life cannot be given or taken away, you are content to live simply, experiencing deep gratitude for the abundant gifts of life, gifts that can never wholly be possessed. So here's a little story here. In a little hut at the foot of a majestic mountain, the Zen master, Ryokan, lived very simply. One autumn night when Ryokan was taking a walk in the moonlight, a thief entered his hut, only to find that there was nothing of value to steal. When Ryokan returned, he found the disappointed thief preparing to leave empty-handed. "My dear fellow," he said, "you have come a long way to visit me, and you must have something to show for your troubles." Ryokan stripped naked and removed the blanket from his bed, offering these gifts to the bewildered thief, who quickly ran off with them. Sitting down naked in the moonlight, Ryokan found himself wishing that he could have given the thief the lovely harvest moon. In the silver silence beneath the moon, he composed this haiku poem: "The moon out the window, left by the thief unstolen." A sense of kinship and connectedness to other human beings is essential to your health and happiness, and you have a gift for creating loving communities. In contrast to the fire type who fascinates others with her charismatic charm, people are attracted to you because you accept them for who they are and do not attempt to change them to suit your needs or preferences. Stable, quiet, compassionate, and well-grounded, you can move out of yourself to experience another person's pain or joy, and with equal ease come back home to yourself. Your sense of self is so secure and your boundaries so well defined that you can step into another person's shoes without becoming confused about whose shoes you are wearing. You are able to practice in your daily life the wisdom contained in this Native American prayer, Great Spirit, grant that I may not criticize my neighbor until I have walked a mile in his moccasins. Earth corresponds to the season known as Indian summer, that intense, glorious period when all four seasons combine to create a feeling of heaven on earth. In the ancient Chinese text, the season of Earth was described as the twilight period at the end of each season, in which the forces of nature are in near perfect balance. But as Earth knows, perhaps better than any of the other powers, the eternal, immutable laws of nature decree that all of life is subject to change. Prosperity is followed by decline, gathering by dispersion, growth by decay. Thus, one of the secrets hidden in the magic of Earth season is the knowledge that periods of harmony and prosperity inevitably will be followed by times of discord and degeneration. The climate corresponding to Earth's power is dampness and humidity. Excess dampness or humidity are considered harmful to Earth types. Earth's power is at its peak between 7 a.m. and 11 a.m. The direction of Earth is the center. According to the Yellow Emperor's classic, everything that is created by the universe meets in the center and is absorbed by the earth. Earth's color is yellow, for yellow is the color of the middle, indicating, as the I Ching explains, that which is correct and in line with duty. In its healthy state, yellow is an impartial color, unbiased and coolly neutral. A pale, sickly yellow or an intense orange hue around the eyes or temples may suggest an imbalance within Earth. Earth's odor is fragrant. If your earth powers are out of balance, a sickening sweet smell similar to rotting overripe fruit indicates the malfunction. Earth's flavor is sweet, similar to the subtle sweetness of ripening fruit. An addiction to or intense dislike of sweets may indicate an earth imbalance. Singing is the sound of earth, and a monotonous sing-song voice or an overly melodious voice may indicate a disharmony in this power. The organ orbs corresponding to the power of Earth are the spleen, pancreas, and stomach. The spleen has been called the official in charge of distribution and the transporter of energy. Its primary function is to exact the pure nutrients from food and fluids and alchemize these elements into qi, blood, and waste products, which are then transported to the organs that govern elimination and circulation. Thus, the spleen is the center of a massive distribution center supplying the body, mind, spirit with sufficient energy, blood, and nutrients. The spleen is also thought to keep the blood flowing within its proper channels. If the spleen qi is deficient or weak, the blood is in danger of moving recklessly and overflowing its pathways, leading to symptoms such as nosebleeds, spotting between menstrual periods, flooding, hemorrhaging, vomiting blood, or blood in the stools. The stomach, official of rotting and ripening, or the seat of food and fluid, is responsible for the active yang functions of receiving food, sifting and sorting for nutrients, and then transporting the pure nutritive energy to the spleen, where it's transformed into qi and blood. The stomach is thought to rule descending forces, forcing nutrients downward, while the spleen governs ascending, distributing nutrients to vital organs. When the stomach orb is not functioning properly, we are unable to assimilate the nutrients needed to strengthen our body, mind, spirit, and our energy level gradually weakens. Nausea, gastrointestinal pain, distension, belching, and vomiting are considered to be signs of disharmony and weakness in the stomach orb. And so, yeah, I have had like some stomach issues like the last little bit, but they have been getting better. And like, yeah, just thought that was interesting, like correspondences to that. So, imbalances in the power of Earth. An excess. So this is what my question always was where do I end and you begin? Because I could never tell, like, my boundaries, like my sense of self, and my boundaries, like, were distorted. So where do I end and you begin? This is a question an excess earth type might ask, for an all-consuming need to please others and win their approval leaves little time or energy for the fulfillment of your own needs. Like, holy shit. There you go. There it is. So your innate need to nurture others has been transformed into a smothering overprotectiveness. You are literally off-center. The squareness of I know who I am has become blurred, and the boundary separating self from others is no longer clearly defined. If the center remains unoccupied, feelings of emptiness begin to influence your thoughts and emotions. Supportive behavior turns meddlesome, and a natural concern for the welfare of others degenerates into constant fretting. The Chinese believe that Earth's tendency to become sick with worry stagnates the yang or the yang energies in the stomach, creating conditions of heat and decay that can contribute to the development of ulcers. The worst fear of the excess earth type is deprivation, which is typically experienced as a severing of connections with other human beings. Feeling empty, lonely, undernourished, hungry for love and attention, you attempt to fill yourself with those foods associated with the power of earth, sweets. Eating sweets temporarily soothes your fears and helps you to feel nourished and rewarded for being a good person, but you feel full only when you are literally gorged with food, and even then you are unable to fill up your center. An excess of earth energy contributes to such intense feelings of emptiness and off-centeredness that the constant craving for more continues unabated. With so much stress placed on the stomach orb, metabolism falters, food and nutrients can't be assimilated properly, and intestinal and digestive problems result. As your metabolism slows down, you are prone to rapid weight gain, and the internal feeling of off-centeredness manifests externally as a seesaw battle between strict dieting and compulsive overeating. Symptoms associated with excess earth energy are excess appetite, water retention, irregular bowel movements and urination, tender gums, PMS, with lethargy, bloating, soreness, hunger and swelling, aching, heavy, filling head and eyes, thick mucus in nose, throat, and mouth, mental bogginess, cloudiness, heaviness, heavy limbs that make moving around an effort, and heaviness of consciousness. Metabolic problems including sluggish metabolism with difficulty losing weight, tendency to thyroid problems, especially hypothyroidism, bowel and digestive disturbances including loose stools, and lethargy, lack of energy, heavy spirit. So that's an excess of earth energy. And then the deficiencies in earth energy typically begin in childhood, for earth types need constant support and nourishment in order to develop feelings of self-worth. If your emotional supports were somehow strained or ruptured in childhood, you may have learned to cover up your real needs with an outward display of detachment and indifference. Whereas an excess in your earth power translates into difficulty asking for what is rightfully yours, a deficiency typically leads to deep feelings of inadequacy and an inability to care for yourself. The squareness of earth, which connotes solidity, firm boundaries, and the ability to maneuver around sharp corners, disintegrates into a wobbly roundness, like a tire that is slowly losing air and deflating and cannot sustain its burden. The first symptom of a deficiency in earth is an ever-increasing dependence on others for your emotional and physical needs. A constant craving for attention, appreciation, and love defines every one of your relationships. Fear of abandonment organizes your energies, and you cling possessively to relatives and friends, smothering them with constant demands for attention and love. The need to be nourished is felt so acutely that you can no longer move out of yourself to appreciate other people's needs or problems. She who seeks nourishment that does not nourish reels from desire to gratification, and in gratification craves desire. Mad pursuit of pleasure for the satisfaction of the senses never brings one to the goal. One should never follow this path, for nothing good can come of it. When the power of earth is deficient, the functions of the spleen and stomach orbs are inhibited. Because the spleen is responsible for transforming food and fluids into energy, blood, and waste products, and then transporting these materials to the appropriate organs, a deficiency in earth energy inevitably creates problems with digestion, which leads to symptoms of fatigue and lethargy. The Chinese believe that when the power of earth is out of balance, food and fluids are not broken down or eliminated properly, and a watery sludge begins to pond up in the system, eventually coagulating into a mucoid substance called tan. A buildup of tan creates an overall quality of excessive dampness, which manifests physically with loose stools, arthritis, which is aggravated by dampness in the atmosphere, and barometric pressure changes. Edema, a buildup of fluid, especially in the abdomen. In the mind and spirit, a buildup of tan is experienced as lethargy, heaviness of spirit, a sense of being sodden or weighed down. The weight of the world is on my shoulders. An increasing pressure in the head, which results in foggy thinking, difficulty concentrating, absent-mindedness, and forgetfulness. The spleen is also responsible for creating upright chi, the energy that sustains and supports the body, mind, spirit, and keeps the organs in their proper places. When Earth's energy is deficient, the spleen can no longer produce a sufficient amount of upright chi. Hemorrhoids and bladder or uterine prolapses are thought to signify a weakness or deficiency in spleen energy. Bloody noses, bleeding gums, a tendency to bruise easily, and breakthrough bleeding between menstrual periods indicate a breakdown in the spleen's ability to hold blood within the vessels. The spiritual counterpart of this physical process of caving in involves feelings of being weighed down by the problems or unable to hold yourself up, a sensation of your energy leaking out at a steady rate, an inability to maintain proper boundaries, and a general feeling of loss of control. Symptoms associated with deficient earth energy: constant hunger with indecision about what to eat, difficulty losing weight, bloating, fluid retention, poor muscle tone, prolapse of stomach, intestine, or uterus, varicose veins, slow healing of cuts, a tendency to bruise easily, bleeding gums, tooth decay, and swollen glands. So, the wisdom of Earth. The earth in its devotion carries all things, good and evil, without exception. In the same way, the superior woman gives to her character breadth, purity, and sustaining power so that she is able to support and to bear with people and things. The I Ching. So, Earth is the peacemaker. An individual with an affinity to Earth has the capacity to nurture herself and others, mediate disputes, and create loving communities. Earth types thrive on peace and harmony and are thrown off balance by disagreement and discord. The natural quality of the Earth type is fertile, nourishing, solid, and restful. The emotion is caring and concern. Balanced, it is supportive, relaxed, considerate, and centered. Imbalanced, with an excess, overprotective, worried, and meddlesome. Deficiency, vacillating, hungry for nourishment, attention, and love. The spiritual quality of Earth is centeredness. The climate is the Indian summer, or the transition between two seasons. The transition between seasons. The climate is dampness and thunder. The direction is the center. The time of day is 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. The color is yellow. The smell is fragrant, ripe, sweet fruits. The taste is subtle sweetness, simple foods. The sound is singing, and the organs are the yin, as the spleen and the pancreas, and the yang, the stomach. So that's pretty super awesome and interesting, like, to receive that today and to look into that today. And although, like, I feel like, yeah, my earth power is coming back into balance, where I had some of those excess symptoms and some of those deficient symptoms at different stages in my life. But yeah, and I do appreciate how it relates to what I'm working through now. And so, yeah, thanks for letting me share with you. And I'm excited for all that's coming through, and for all that's now, and for all the new, like all the possibilities, and all this renewed, like, ability to receive. Yeah, to give, be, share, and receive right now and right here. And to be here, to be love here, to be right here, to be as I am right here. So, hope you're loving yourself, choosing love for yourself, being love for yourself, caring for yourself. All right, be good to yourself. We'll see you next time.